Have you ever played a game that gives you really conflicting thoughts about it? Like, you really enjoy what you played, but also really hated a lot of aspects about it, and vice versa. Well, that's what we're about to look into today. While my access to games of various platforms are limited, I have played enough titles to offer my take on the games I both love and hate. Basically, I'll be measuring these entries based on how strong my opinions are for these games, whether it's on the love or the hate scale, or possibly even both. Get ready folks, because the back and forth ride we're taking is sure to spin some heads. This is the top 10 games I love and hate. I'm gonna be frank with you guys, I'm not the biggest Sonic person you'll find. While I do like some of the characters and watched a couple of the TV shows, I don't find myself playing that many Sonic games. Because of that, I can't really answer what makes for a good Sonic experience. Honestly, if there's any I'd most likely look for, it's one where all these signature characters come together to beat the crap out of each other with their unique powers and skill sets. Sonic Battle sort of did that. This game gave me what I was looking for, a fun Sonic fighting game with a recognizable roster and quaint use of a 3D space within a 16-bit environment. The characters are really fun to play as, with their various combos and customizable movesets. My favorites might just be Shadow and Cream just because of how broken they are. You even got your moveset simulator Emerald, who can make the most out of the best moves from the various different characters. So this sounds like a great game, but what's wrong with it? Well, honestly, the standard sandbox gameplay is all there is to it. There's not much else going for this game other than the story campaign, which is so repetitive that it practically fried my brain playing through it. Having to listen to the terrible digitized soundtrack this game has doesn't help whatsoever. To top it all off, being a fighting game on a handheld with no online compatibility means not everyone can get the pleasure of playing this with friends, including myself. So I'm stuck with this super tedious story campaign, and at some point, I just lost interest. It's a shame really. Sonic Battle's core gameplay is really good, and I would love to see more being done with it. Perhaps a Smash Bros style adventure mode with progression levels, unique enemies and boss fight would have spiced up the gameplay a bit more. I do want to see the Sonic team try out a game like this again because, given the amount of complaints the series gets for its overbearing characters, it will be great if they focus on the genre that actually takes full advantage of the series' overblown roster. Bomberman is such a weird franchise. Like, while a lot of classic game series got some proper tribute from fans as time went by, this one kinda got left out despite being a massive franchise standing still even today. It makes me wonder if there's something about the series that helped it do well but still managed to turn people away in certain ways. In my eyes, Bomberman 64 kind of exemplifies that. While this isn't your traditional Bomberman game, it still keeps the core fun of the series, given you're blowing stuff up with your bombs and getting various moves and power-ups to further enhance the experience. That being said, while the level designs are creative enough, there are some gimmicks in the game that go way overboard. The amount of times the game makes you create clunky bomb bridges just to reach an item or a power-up is absolutely ridiculous. Given that your own bombs can hurt you and you die instantly without a handicap, puzzle building that involves intricate use of the bombs is a huge double-edged sword. And the gold cards. If you've seen my review of this game, you know what a nightmare it is to hunt these down. Sure, you can just play the game normally and get a serviceable ending out of it, but if you want to get a true ending, you need to get all the gold cards from all the standard levels and bosses. And unless you can tolerate how idiotic the hiding spots were and how painful the bosses are to endure, you're better off finding actual gold and smelt them into rectangles yourself. That pretty much sums up most Bomberman games. Core gameplay is nice and functional, but the clear requirements can get pretty ridiculous. Despite this, I still love this game and the series. Maybe it is a masochistic side of me, but there's something weirdly captivating about flawed, yet fun games like these. Trust me, we'll be seeing a lot of that going forward. Oh boy, it's about time I talk about Battle Network again, huh? As much as I love the action RPG romp featuring Mega Man and his internet shenanigans, I have to admit, not all of the games are perfect. Typical of Mega Man, there's gonna be that one game that'll try to do something less welcoming than others. Enter Battle Network 5, Team Colonel and Team Protoman. The game that introduced the Team Grid battle system unique only to these particular titles. You could say the uniqueness parallels the Totem Trials in Pokemon Sun and Moon. The difference is that people generally like that one, but this, yeah, it's clear not everyone is happy with this new system. That said, I actually don't mind it that much. While the system itself can be annoying with the movement and time limit constraints, I still really enjoy playing as these different net-navis and see them work together to accomplish the various missions. Besides, the regular gameplay is still there, just not as focused as the previous titles. So what is it that I don't like about this game then? Simple. The story. In concept, it seems interesting. Len and his friends were attacked by Regal and have most of the net-navi stolen. As such, Len has to team up with a new organization to put a stop to Regal's plans. The story seems like it could work, except for how badly written the characters are. Now, okay, not everyone sucks. Beryl, Dusk, Dingo, and Jasmine are all decent characters, but sweet mercy, the bad ones. There are times where we literally ally with unempathetic jerks who have no regard for how awful and petty they're being. Team Proto-Man especially. Tesla Magnus has no qualms getting Lance's friends nearly buried to death, and they just forgive her like that. Firefox stole a government program just to make fireworks, and that's it. No in-depth reason, just fireworks. And I'm not sure if I'm comfortable being buddy-buddy with Princess Pride after she literally tried to kill Lan in the previous game. She didn't even say sorry, they just talk like they're old friends. What is going on here? Even the villain sucks. Regal went from a mysterious schemer with a thought-provoking philosophy to a brain-dead idiot who just laughs and spouts, "I'm evil, fear me!" Did the fall from the previous game get him severe concussion and made his vocaps go haywire? Might as well. It's like a different writer is in charge of this game because these games never had continuity errors this bad. Between the stiff gimmicks and the inconsistent idiotic story, I think it's clear why some don't favor this game very much. I'll admit the story is the main reason I find the game less replayable compared to the other Battle Network games, but, you know, it's still Battle Network. The deck building gameplay is still fun, the bosses are still great, and I'm all for trying out new features when they're not overwhelming. I can't completely dismiss it as part of the series' family, even if it tries too hard yet doesn't try enough in all the wrong places. One of the most fascinating things about Subnautica is how it's a horror game hidden within a survival genre. Of course, I don't think that surprises anyone anymore, knowing that everything takes place underwater. So let's be real here. You find a place too dark, an object too big, and a creature too... Chances are one of these things are gonna make you wanna flip your PC. I know too well not everyone's a fan of the horrors of the submerged. Personally, that sort of horror has always fascinated me. After all, I did grow up playing Mario 64 and find Jolly Roger Bay to be the pinnacle of my nightmares. Hello! So this game is pretty much my cup of tea. That doesn't change the fact that it still really gets under my skin though. Sometimes even minor glitches like delayed entity spawns and invisible items make the experience extremely stressful, whether it's for the good reasons or not. Even apart from that, the various biomes and ecologies are really vibrant and interesting. Each one was given a lot of focus on how its biodiversity works. Sure, it doesn't install its terrain generator in a slot machine, but sometimes what's given focus works much better. I really do enjoy Subnautica, and it's probably the game I hate the least on this list. It has a few technical issues that make the game feel more bullshit than legitimately scary sometimes, but none of it detracts from how spectacularly focused the game is in its world and gameplay. I haven't flapped my mouth about Fire Emblem that much on this channel, which is kind of strange. Those of you who tuned in long enough to see the Portrayed by SpongeBob videos can all tell how maddening my enthusiasm for this series gets. So given that I bring it up here, I think you all know which one I'm talking about. Yep, it's Fates. For those of you who's been living under a rock, Fates, the 14th Fire Emblem title, is the most controversial entry in the whole series for reasons just about everyone can agree with. Like Battle Network 5, the gameplay is a ton of fun, but the story is a mountain hill of messy decisions and irrational writing. It still maintains the solid strategy RPG gameplay with exclusive mechanics like new weapons and classes that adds great variety to the gameplay. The Conquest path in particular really exerted its authority as the hardest Fire Emblem game to date, and gave players who are unsatisfied with Awakening's baby difficulty some challenge to latch onto. It's not always fair though, with some stages being way too gimmicky, and I really don't get why they need to limit the weapon ranks as much as they do. While some restrictions are nice, others feel like they subtract from the gameplay more than anything. As for the stories and characters, I don't get vehement about the bad aspects of it as much as others do. I still like a lot of the characters in the game, and there's still some wonderful support conversations to indulge in and enjoy. The Hoshidans in particular are super colorful, with a lot of them making it to some of my favorites in the whole series. But still, the bad writing is definitely there. Some characters, especially the Norian ones, can get pretty flat and unmemorable. Even some of the good characters were severely butchered in quality thanks to how clunky the stories are. Given that so much of it is centered around Corrin, the densest protagonist in the entire series, It's hard to take a lot of the irrational decisions these characters make seriously, when so much of it is spent on stroking the Death Dragonborn's ego. However, Corrin is only one half of the biggest problem surrounding the game's story. Let's not forget about Garon, who is by and far the crappiest villain in the entire series. The game supposedly thrives on the narrative of finding good in two factions of war, yet why do we have this empty husk of a villain be the center of the plot's drive? If anything, it further encourages the player to antagonize the enemy. What's the point of deciding which path is right when all of them boil down to just beating the bad guy to solve all problems? It's really dumb. I definitely can't say this is one of my favorite Fire Emblem games, but I won't call it my least favorite either. It may have been a spectacular mess, but it still had enough to ensure I had a good time. Plus, with Three Houses peaking as the biggest Fire Emblem game to date, it's nice to see the writers learn their lesson and focus on letting people decide which side they want to choose rather than what they should choose. Well, they mostly got it right. Still got ways to go before they make good villains again. To understand the importance of difficulty in games, especially in the modern era, it takes a degree of masochism to dig into the truly dark ones. I've reviewed the Ninja Gaiden games and talked about how other games can take what they do best and leave behind its broken parts. On one hand, there's Cyber Shadow, which I think encapsulates a fair degree of the Golden Age difficulty without over-reliance on cheap design. On the other hand, we got Cuphead, which comes packing with the unnecessary inconveniences those old games are known for. Now don't get me wrong, this game is amazing. The art style is fantastic, the music is a blast, and as a boss rush game, a lot of the boss fights are really fun. If you're just playing the game to get through the bosses as they are, you'll have a decent time. But if you're like me and want to see everything this game has to offer, yeah. The run and gun levels, while not required to beat the game, are compulsory if you want to get the coins to buy items and upgrades for tougher bosses going forward. And they are bad! They force you to make ridiculously specific moves to get through and beat them, and if you die once, it's back to the start with you. Sure, you can keep reviving with 2 players, but you'll have to deal with reduced attack power as a drawback. Unless both players are really intuitive, that will slow your progress down by a lot. Oh yeah, and trying to get perfect scores against the bosses? Well, if you played the pre-patched version of this game, good luck with that. No, I mean it. You needed good luck to get perfect scores on some of these bosses. Sometimes they shoot projectiles that you can parry, sometimes they don't. You can't afford to wait around for them to spawn one either, because winning in record time is a thing you gotta keep an eye for. Wally Walbert, Sally Stageplay, Calamaria, and the Phantom Express fully exemplifies how frustrating this gets. Did I mention some of them get glitchy too? Now, yes, that was mostly before the patch. Nowadays, the game has gotten much more fair, with boss attacks giving you more opportunities to parry. Plus, a lot of the glitches were fixed accordingly. Still, if you're like me and have gone out to complete the game in its prime, then you should know the pain as much as I do. Drop the cup onto the floor once, and the crack will never leave the mug. Well, I give my thoughts on the 3 Golden Age Mario and Luigi games, so I think it's high time we talk about the last of them. Mario and Luigi Dream Team. Kind of strange to have this one here, isn't it? I'll explain. The Mario and Luigi games have always sought ways to push the limits on how advanced their RPG mechanics can get, and this is no exception. Dream Team goes full force with an energetic battle system that makes use of the 3D environments and perspective. Both the overworld and dream battles are really fun to engage, especially thanks to the various new special moves and counterattacks. Not to mention the various wacky Luigi-nary moves. It is bar none one of the most creative mechanic-wise. It's also one of the most challenging entries in the series. Bosses carry really complex attack patterns, so you really gotta stay on your toes with every fight. I suppose it's redemption for how easy Bowser's Inside Story is in the long run. The core gameplay is solid, nice presentation, and the signature charm of the series is still intact. Yet it still found its way on the list. Why? It's so slow! I'm not talking about optimization, the game runs just fine. I'm talking about the general flow of the game. The pacing is ridiculously drawn out with translative animations that take forever to get done, and tutorials that eat up over 50% of the game. I am not kidding, even the final levels and giant boss fights are copiously tutorial ridden. I get it, they want to show off their new mechanics, but they don't have to stop us dead on our tracks just to do so. Good tutorials can exist, guys. The story is also kinda barren. The villains don't do anything for most of the game, so you spend the majority of the time just doing fetch quests. Say what you will about the previous games, their stories actually kept you engaged at all times, even if they can be a mess. Here, there's very little incentive to keep you interested other than the boss fights. So yeah, a lot of people complain that Partners in Time is the most flawed entry in the series. I disagree. This one takes the cake. It's a shame because it really does have a lot of awesome features that could have made it one of the best. If only the game actually respects the player's intelligence. Oh, and have Tasma actually do things too. Seriously, I keep forgetting that guy exists and I don't really want to because he is really cool. As it stood, they did learn their lesson with Paper Jam and tried to keep the tutorials optional this time. Too bad the story in that game is non-existent though. Dream Team is still a great game and I do enjoy it for a first time experience, but compared to the other Mario and Luigi games, I don't think I'll be replaying this one in the future. The following contains spoilers for the Danganronpa series. Skip ahead to this timestamp if you want to avoid it. Danganronpa is a fascinating series purely for its concept and potential. Having an ensemble of colorful characters interact in a life-threatening situation opens a lot of opportunities for various chemistries and mystery building. Unfortunately, with how the series handled it, it's really stupid. What I enjoy most about Danganronpa is the eccentric cast of characters and how they play off of each other based on the scenarios throughout the game. Almost everything else I couldn't care less for because of how forced and pretentious they get. The stories are annoying. Every game has to slap together subplots that are either repeated or go nowhere, and the plot twists always focus on shocking you rather than being cohesive and serving a purpose. You can tell they don't plan on letting the whole story make sense with how poorly the DR3 anime ties everything together. Because of the jumbled mess of stories, even some characters fall flat because of it. A lot of interesting characters given pitiful developments before they were inevitably lynched, bland, uninteresting ones that live for way longer than they deserve, and pretentious, obnoxious clowns sucking up way too much spotlight as if they're stars of the show despite how shallow their personalities are. Also, for a series typically known for their crass and meta humor, they sure can't seem to get away from relying on tropes themselves. Awkward and poorly drawn fanservice, repetitive catchphrases, blank slate protagonists turning messiahs, and the constant repetition of mystery solving patterns which makes a lot of the cases easy to solve and figure out. Like, this series is rated M, right? As in, made for mature audiences? I think their intelligence deserves a lot more respect than this. Another consistent problem I have with these games is how you'll only get the most out of the characters by interacting with them via the protagonist's free time events. It's fine if the main leads are interesting like Hajime, since he adds a lot to the interactions, but boring ones like Shuichi have so little to show for that it drags away the potential of the characters with them. One of the biggest reasons I love Fire Emblem is because a lot of its characters get to interact off of each other in various different ways. You don't get that in Danganronpa until Talent Development Plan in V3, and that's not even canon. Look, I love Kodaka, he's a great guy, but sometimes it feels like he's so far up in his nuts about his writing being high art, despite a lot of it consisting of pointless crass jokes and random plot twists that get in the way of actual character development. He can make amazing characters with great arcs and personalities. He's proven that time to time again with characters like Sakura, Kazuichi, Monaka, and Kaede. I just wish he treated that as the gold standard and not the silver occasion. As much as I tear into this series, I really can't seem to get my mind off of it because it has so much potential to be something better. From the looks of it, it seems like I hate this series more than I love it, and whether that's true or not, I'm certainly willing to take what it does best as inspiration to, you know, do a little better at the very least. Now with the Decadence collection on the rise, we got a more fleshed out version of the talent development side game that seems to focus more on toying around with these various characters. I suppose the developers finally got the hint that people don't come to Danganronpa for the story, but for the characters. Whether it's delivered well or not though, that remains to be seen. As someone who's planning to make a game of his own, I've been snooping around to find gameplay styles and mechanics that I'd like to take inspiration from. One of those being stealth. I don't hear a lot of great things about the stealth genre as a whole. Even stealth segments in games are usually one of the least enjoyable aspects of it. But there were a few I've heard that seem to uphold a decent reputation. One of which is Sly Cooper. These games lean more towards 3D platformers with stealth elements, but it is one of the best examples of it. The primary reason being that it's rather light on the penalty you get for clumsiness, and offers you incentive to explore its levels at your leisure. Still, that's not to say these games aren't rusty in your own ways. The first game in particular, Sly and the Thievius Raccoonus, seemed to carry the greatest extremes from both sides of quality. It's the only title to have a linear level progression, so there's plenty of room to show off a variety of level designs and stealth mechanics. While the open world design of the sequels is pretty much the way to go for the series moving forward, there's something about how niche the levels are in the original Sly that I appreciate a lot. Granted, the platforming isn't perfect. The camera gets uncooperative and dying instantly is a consistent nuisance. But as devastating as those can be, it didn't bother me so much that I'd find it game-breaking. What does infuriate me, however, is the god-forsaken mini-games. The stiff racing segments with Murray, the chicken chasing with Sly, the unintuitive drive and collect segments, and Miss Ruby's input delay rhythm boss fights.
They are fucking horrible. I hate them.
You can't win these minigames by playing them normally. You pretty much have to rely on some vague exploit to even get anywhere with all this garbage. It would have been fine if they're optional, but they're not. These minigames count as actual levels, so if you won't play them, you're not going anywhere. If you want to give us a break from the stress of the main game, don't go around and make those breaks worse. It's like pouring chili sauce in someone's drink after a spicy chicken dinner. What kind of psycho does that? The core stealth mechanics of Sly 1 are still really fascinating, and I'm really glad I played it and got the inspiration I needed. I just wish those are what the game actually focuses on and not, well, these. In the long run, at least the developers did acknowledge how bad the minigames were and toned them down a bit in the sequels. Those aren't that much better, but they're at least beatable without having to scoop out your brain for a change. Making good games for the sake of being successful is par for the course of the business. Making games for the sake of art tends to come with very peculiar repercussions. Allow me to present to you Evo: The Search for Eden. An extremely rare cult classic that delves into the construct of a lifeform's cosmic evolution and the gameplay intricacies that come with it. Alongside its prequel, Theory of Evolution, it's the precursor to many evolution-themed games such as Spore, Lack of Love, and Dragon Seeds. The idea of a game where you can evolve your creature in any way you want across various ages and generations is such a cool idea. And the way they handle the world building of these different time periods, the interactions that come with it, and the impact each one has towards the upcoming age are really fascinating. This game will have been absolutely amazing if playing it isn't so brain dead. All the gameplay boils down to is killing enemies to grind experience, upgrade your creature with the best possible body parts, and use it to take down a super cheap boss, which will most likely boil down to abusing drawn out stun locks. Otherwise, you get trashed in 1 or 2 hits. Repeat this 5 to 6 times and you win the game. It's so thoughtlessly simple and tedious that I honestly cannot call it a good game. If this was any other game, I would have quit after the second cycle, but something about this game in particular really managed to keep me invested somehow. The story, the various strange things that happen in the game, and how it somehow tries to parallel real-life historical discoveries are so over the top and ridiculous that I just can't seem to turn away. In a sense, it wound up being the opposite of Spore. That game has mostly functional mechanics and knows what it's trying to be, but a lot of the stuff surrounding it is so mundane and generated that there wasn't much to keep the game interesting. While I enjoy that game's creature stages, I pretty much dropped off from it after the civilization stages. As for Evo, at first I only played the game to test the waters of how some games handle concepts of evolution. But as I keep playing, I stuck around because I really want to find out just how much more ridiculous the story can get. It's so bizarre that I won't dare spoil any of its plot points. So yeah, overall, I kinda recommend this game. Not as casual fun, rather as a case study on how far you can go with a bizarre game themed around evolution. If you can stomach the overly grindy gameplay and the meticulous difficulty spikes all for the sake of a unique experience, I think you'll find that Evo is worth your time just as much as it did mine. Truly a perfect game for me to love and hate at the same time. Thanks a lot for watching, folks. I know I'm not gonna win everyone's favor with some of my choices here, so feel free to tell me what you think. Consider subscribing if you'd like to tune in for more of my videos. This is a pretty exhausting topic to tackle, so whether or not we'll do something like this again, we'll see. Have a good day.